Hello, I'm Michael Pierce, and this is The Human Condition. Today we're talking about hypoglycemia brain. This is a topic that a lot of people have asked us about lately, and this is one that comes up for a lot of people that have both hypoglycemia and hyperglycemia. So when a person has hypoglycemia, it means that they're experiencing a low blood sugar event. Now, this may not be a medical event, which is defined as below 65 units of glucose in a fasting person, or even not fasting, but below 65 units in the blood. That's the medical definition of hypoglycemia. However, a person can feel hypoglycemic even when they're not at 65. They can be, below 85 and feel not so good. 85 is a pretty common target for people, and it's a nice number. So low blood sugar essentially means that a person doesn't have enough sugar circulating in their bloodstream to feed their organs. So they start to get a little sleepy, they start to get cranky, they might start to sweat. It stimulates their sympathetic nervous system, and it allows their adrenals to start firing cortisol and sometimes epinephrine. This is adrenaline. You may have heard of that before. This hypoglycemia most commonly can come about when somebody doesn't have very stable membranes in their cells. And that usually comes about from not enough minerals, trace minerals of many, many types, over 70 trace minerals, and also having stable saturated fats and having lots of healthy protein. If a person's cells become depleted because of the problems with fat, protein, and minerals, then they become very susceptible to needing fuel, and they crave carbohydrates, which is kind of the last thing they need. So they crave carbohydrates, but they really need protein, fat, minerals, and vitamins very often. So people that are deficient in nearly anything can get hypoglycemic because of the instability of their cells. It's important to make sure that people have chromium, the mineral chromium, because that is the glucose tolerance factor that allows your insulin receptors to work and allows insulin to trigger the opening of the cells so that you can let sugar in to cells from the bloodstream. So that's really important. Some people just don't have enough chromium. You'd be amazed at how many people we see in our hair tests when we look at hair analysis. Hair analysis is not the most accurate measure for minerals, but it's a useful measurement, and it can help us infer how somebody might be doing. So we do that in some cases. Most of the time we take a history and we look at a patient's symptoms and we correlate them with what they're eating and not eating. And that tells us if they're getting enough of things like chromium and zinc and vanadium and manganese and all those trace minerals. The ability to sometimes fast for a long time and be okay and not kick into that sympathetic mode is different than other people that, they go 2 hours and they're just destroyed. They're not stable at all. So what's the difference between those people? Well, usually the ones that are able to fast for a long time have got adequate minerals, adequate storage of B vitamins, adequate storage of macro minerals like calcium and magnesium, adequate saturated fat in their cell membranes, and adequate protein in their muscles. And they've got healthy insulin receptors all over their body, and they're not insulin resistant. So this is the general idea, is that some people are healthier than others at a given moment. And most of you can get healthy if you're not healthy by learning these different steps. So over time, you can get to the point where you can fast and you can go for a day or two without eating and only have a small hiccup of an interval where you feel just a little bit weird and then you're okay. Some people are simply dehydrated. They don't have enough water, and that will be another thing that will give them problems with hypoglycemia and other difficulties and deficiencies. The brain registers hypoglycemia as a real stress response. If your time to hypoglycemia is, less than 8 hours, you probably have some kind of imbalance, and it would be a good idea to talk with your doctor and figure out what that problem is. If you don't have a good doctor, you may be able to figure it out yourself. Those are things that can be done. We now know that even blue light, artificial blue light, can trigger insulin resistance and hyperglycemia, which then causes a reactive hypoglycemia. So it's possible that a person could have this whiplash of both low and high blood sugar in the same day. So many of you may be getting whiplashed where your blood work shows you've got prediabetes or diabetes, you've got high blood sugar, you've got insulin resistance, you've got high insulin, you've got high hemoglobin A1C. You're basically making real crispy the proteins and sugars that are in your bloodstream, and you're damaging them. You're making them decay and rust like metal decays when it rusts. And so that horrible glycation process of the crispifying of the molecules is really dangerous, and it's reversible. So you need to be able to know that you can reverse that process. So we want to give minerals, we want to give saturated fats that are healthy from clean animals, we want to give clean protein, and we want to give a great variety of protein. Things like isoleucine, leucine, and valine. Those are individual proteins that are really important for stabilizing both high and low blood sugar. And one of the big things that's often forgotten is rancid seed oils are a big deal. I'm not saying that you can never eat omega-6 fats, because omega-6 fats are vital to us. They're important to us. And they're in whole grains and beans and nuts and seeds, and they can be very useful in some cases. I don't use a lot of them from a vegetable perspective. I try to rely on animal sources for most of my personal omega-3 and 6 content. However, omega-6 from healthy raw plants that are fresh is not a bad thing, but as soon as you process or grind or press a seed or a nut and you get an oil out of it, it's going to start going rancid. So you have to consume it immediately. If you get an oil that's a grain, bean, nut, or seed oil and it's been processed and it's in a jar, it's gone through 7 to 11 different steps of deodorizing and heating and acidification and chemicals that have been added to it and cooking and all the process to try to deodorize and defat and change the molecules so that it will be stable on the shelf. And part of the great benefit of the omega-6 oils in nature is that they're not stable. You get the benefit of eating that, that wheat berry or that nut right off the tree, and you get that benefit right away. Or if you press olive oil and you get it right away, you're getting some amazingly healthy omega-6 immediately, but not if it's been put in a bottle first. So that's the sad part about eating these PUFAs, or polyunsaturated fatty acids. The oxidative stress level is extremely high, and those rancid oils that come from seed oils and sunflower, safflower oil, peanut oil, corn oil, there's many, many more, but these lightweight oils are really detrimental, not fundamentally because the plants are bad, but because of all the treatment that's required. If you're consuming those processed oils, they look really pretty in the bottle and they last a long time, but they're really oxidatively stressful on the body. So they will cause problems with ATP, energy production. They will cause problems with insulin resistance. They will knock you out of ketosis if you're trying to be ketogenic. They will trigger adrenal stress and make your adrenals overfire in the morning or at night or in the afternoon. They can really drive a person to be insulin resistant and or hypoglycemic. So the first step in hypoglycemia is to consume food more often, but not to get stuck eating a bunch of nasty carbs to solve the problem. Now, it will solve the problem in the moment. It'll stop your sweating, it'll stop your shaking, it'll stop your sense of doom, it'll stop that horrible feeling of being hangry and hypoglycemic, but it doesn't fix the root cause. So don't rely on, if you're wise, don't rely on empty calories and even carbohydrates in general to fix it. It's not really the best idea. There's an old book out that's been around for a long time called Potatoes, Not Prozac, where they talk about eating potatoes and carbohydrates instead of taking Prozac, for example, to help with the brain and with serotonin. And that's a quick fix, but it doesn't fix the root cause, because then you just become a carbohydrate addict and you become very unstable in your blood sugar and unstable in your minerals, and you begin depleting your minerals and your vitamins from consuming all those carbohydrates and adding all that oxidative stress to your body. Ultimately, at some point, you might even find that a lab test of urine called 8-hydroxydeoxyguanosine, 8-OHDH, is something that's elevated. And that's a really good measure that we use in science to look at oxidative stress, but not just everyday oxidative stress. We're talking about oxidative stress specifically in your DNA. So you see this show up in people's DNA when the oxidative stress has gotten so bad that their DNA is now getting damaged. And when you see this in young people, it starts to really scare you because you go, man, this is awful. The good news is it's reversible. So if you're a young person or not, and you have high 8-hydroxydeoxyguanosine in your urine on your organic acids test, think about really changing your life, because that's not good. Thank you.